Well, we are living now in 3 immigrations. But here's the thing. An immigration need not be from across the seas. New voices can come from within. And so if you think about it, we have 3 sets of new voices that have been heard over the last 20 or 30 years and are now being heard again and more. We are at the end of 1 immigration from within, at the beginning of 2 more. The immigration that is concluding is the immigration of women, whose voices never were heard. They weren't on our boards. There were no women rabbis, no women cantors, no women presidents. And now, of course, we just take for granted that women can be any of the above. I started rabbinic school when they were all men. I remember those days. I remember when the first woman was in my class. And now I look back and I can't believe how boring it was. All of a sudden, look at what we have, healing and new music, and, well, I could go on and on. I don't have to. The impact of women should be obvious. What would have happened if we hadn't been open to that? I mean, it would have happened anyway, but what would have happened if we'd fought it? But thank God we didn't. And now look at the change that's occurred. It is no accident that Reform Judaism is now the leading brand of Judaism in America. And a great reason for that is that we welcomed women into our midst, and here we are. And so we have to be welcoming of the next 2 generations. The next great chance for a change is the next great immigration. The second immigration, then, if the first is women, the second immigration is the immigration of people who are not born Jewish, Jews by choice, or those who just find their way here. I say, in the orbit of Judaism, they're looking for something. Usually not the food. We need to welcome all who want to walk through those doors, and those who don't even come near those doors, but whom we see in Starbucks or wherever, who may be looking for spirituality, because we have it. And we have it in terms of an ancient tradition with peoplehood and with social values. We need to be clear about who we are, proud of what we have, our tradition. And we can bring to Americans the sense that they matter, the sense of meaning in their lives. More on that on Sunday. If we are welcoming, then, of that immigration, we will change yet again the greatest opportunity we have had in decades. And third, and finally, it is time for a changeover of generation. Baby boomers will have to move over and make room for people who think differently. But if, in fact, we are open to the next generation and its claims on what life is all about, if we do not insist on inflicting our own values and judgments on things, if we are open on such things, for example, as our relationship to Israel, if we are open on the issues that matter to our time, we will discover a whole new set of voices. And if we do not prove welcoming of the next generation, the next door in Hebrew, then all that we have built will be gone like sand overnight. And so we are in the midst of a generational changeover, our third immigration. Well, I started by saying you can change history. And I want to end there. I want to invite you into history. Do you think Jews in most of our eras have made history? No, we've responded to it. We responded to anti-Semitism. We responded to pogroms. We even responded when we were happy because we never knew that we had any rights. Well, we usually didn't. But now look at us. We can do anything we like. We can actually be proactive. We are in the midst of a potential revolution, therefore. Jews becoming proactive about Jewish spirituality, about what Judaism has for the world and for our country. Jews joining with people who are not ethnic, not born Jewish, in building a common future. Jews of a new generation taking their place among us. And all that can change mountains, move mountains. I often wonder, how many people know they're in a revolution when it happens? How many people here were, let's say, in the 60s? Remember the revolution of the 60s? Any of you were flower children or hippies? Now, I was around then, and everybody I know who was around then says, "Oh, me, I was there." Trust me, none of us were. I remember a book called Loose Change, I think, about that era. I was in a book club for a while, and a whole bunch of people who were part of the 60s read the book because that's what it was about. And while we were sitting around, we said, anybody here part of the revolution? Anybody here take over any of those buildings, burn your draft card? Anybody here part of the Columbia crowd that, did all that stuff? I mean, that's what happened. They took over the dean's office. Remember this? They burnt all that stuff. So we said, anybody here from Columbia? Well, New York, lots of people. We said, anybody here take over the dean's office? Not a soul. One guy said, well, me, sort of. What do you mean, sort of? Well, he says, I was going to law school, and we actually went to class instead. But he said one day, someone shamed us out of it and said, you know what, you got to take part in the revolution. So we said, okay. So we decided not to go to school that day, and instead we made signs, and we joined the revolution that day with signs. We carried signs. He says, we weren't very good at it, however, because there was a sign that said, please do not walk on the lawn, and we went around. Most of us walk around history. We don't really make it. But you know what? How wonderful it is to look back and say you were part of something big. Don't you really want to do that? I mean, don't you really want to be part of something big? So here's my invitation to you. You can do it here in this congregation. I mean, this congregation is leading the way. You can change history by being part of the change here. And I urge you this. Someday you will be old and gray. 20, 30 years from now, maybe more. And you'll be sitting on a porch in a rocking chair. And your great-great-grandchildren, or the kids next door maybe, or who knows, will come up and they'll say to you, were you part of the revolution at the turn of the 21st century? And you want to be able to say you were. No joke. Come on along for the ride. It's going to be spectacular. In 10 years' time, you will have all the history and the greatness of this place with all the novelty and the experiment and the excitement of bringing in new immigrations and changing the generation and doing who knows what. I don't know, because it's being planned by people here. I'm just here to invite you and tell you it's the chance of your life. So come along, because someday there'll be another scholar here, and the other scholar is going to give a talk. And I know what her talk is going to be. I will save her the energy of making it up. She's going to talk about generations and their project. Only she's going to have a little longer talk because she's going to have to talk about you. And she will say, starting back perhaps where I didn't, at a man named Isaac Mayer Wise who came here in 1846 and wrote in his diary, despite the fact that the Jews were ignorant around where he saw, remember, the German Jews didn't come here with maces and gimbals in their pocket. And he could have painted the future dismally, the vanishing American Jew. And instead, he wrote in his diary, I painted the future in golden hues. What a visionary. All right, the scholar in 100 years will say, Isaac Mayer Wise in 1846 painted the future in golden hues, and she will look out at the congregation, who will then be the next generation grown up, and in fact their children, and she will say at all those people who will not be ethnic, who will come from all over, who will be black and white and people of all ethnic backgrounds, she will say to that multicultural crowd of people who are finding Judaism for adults, she'll say to them, you are the golden hue. You are the golden age of American Judaism. And the reason you are here is that back in the beginning of the 21st century, your ancestors seized the moment and decided not to be passive, but to join in congregational change and make history. I welcome you to a new era. You can color it gold. Shabbat Shalom.